Welcome back, and in this episode, we're going to get into Volume 3, Badass Women in Herstory. We're going to be ranging from swashbuckling queer opera singers to a 21-year-old activist standing up to Nazi Germany, all the way back to Black female millionaires in the Gold Rush era fighting racism within the country. And that's not even all of it. I'm Carmen Renee Flores, and this is my podcast, All the Cunts to the Front, and we are covering history, nay, herstory, that we were never taught. And learning about these badass women and queer people in history kind of feels like a battle cry of the soul, which is why I put it together. This podcast is for anyone who is in the process of becoming. I hope that whoever is meant to hear what I have to say is listening. But as always, all the cunts to the front. And we're going to get right into it. Let's go. Let's start with Jane Elliott. If you don't know her by her name, you probably know her by an extremely famous experiment that I'm going to bring up in a little bit. But that famous experiment led her to becoming a globally known diversity educator and speaker. Now, this tough, loving white woman is a fierce warrior of justice. She was born in 1933 in Riceville, Iowa, raised by a farming family, and developed at a very early age an interest in education and social justice. Now, she's an OG kind of teacher, and when I say that, I mean like she began her teaching career in a one-room schoolhouse when schools were still schoolhouses. Now, I think the turning point in her life and her career came the day after Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination in 1968. She decided to conduct the Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes exercise with her third grade class. This is the famous exercise I'm talking about, and I have seen played out in many different schools, ages, like places that she has conducted it. It's amazing to watch what happens when no one's life is in actual danger. I'm going to tell you what happened, okay? So the first time it happened, it was in her third grade class, right? So in this exercise, students were divided by eye color and treated as superior or inferior to stimulate the experience of discrimination. And they switched roles the next day. And I have to remember if she did it in her first exercise, but she did do it in all the ones after. For example, if you were in the blue-eyed group and she decided that was seen as the inferior group, then they wore a very soft cloth collar for the day, and they were seen as inferior and treated as such. Never in any physical harm, nothing like that. This was purely like a psychological experiment that there's so much controversy about. And the exercise was documented in the film The Eye of the Storm and later featured in a PBS documentary, A Class Divided. Now, this experiment gained national attention and sparked a very significant debate, leading Elliott to become a full-time diversity educator and public speaker. She started conducting workshops and lectures worldwide, influencing education on racism, prejudice, diversity, and she did this for over 50 years. Now, her methods were debated, but like I said, no one was ever in any actual threat or harm in any kind. They were never in any real danger. But you had people, usually privileged white people, that were extremely offended, would get emotional, would have outbursts and all these things. And then she would point out very matter-of-factly, very frankly, she would not get emotional in the situation. She would be like, you are upset, you're experiencing, this is called discrimination. You're experiencing for 1 hour of one day of your life. And these people of color, different ethnic backgrounds, experience this type of prejudice and discrimination every single day of their life. And that was the point, getting it across to people that did not get it. So her methods, even though extremely controversial, are credited with making realities of discrimination tangible for many participants and viewers. And she went on to receive many awards, including the National Mental Health Association Award for Excellence in Education, and has been recognized by institutions such as California State University and the BBC's list of 100 women. But activism comes at a price, doesn't it? Elliott and her family faced a lot of backlash and ostracism in her own community because of her outspoken stance on racism and her teaching methods. And despite her criticism, she continues with her anti-racism work, her activism, she runs workshops, and she inspires new generations, including her own family members, to carry on her work. This woman is regarded highly, okay? She is seen as a pioneering anti-racism activist and educator. Again, best known for her blue-eyed brown eye experiment, but she's dedicated her entire life, over 50 years, her entire life of fighting discrimination and speaking publicly about it and never holding back. You should see her. Please look them up. Actually, you should see her like retorts and how she speaks to people. So matter of factly, full of so much force and so much information that is that's just all factual. It's amazing. She like takes people down with information, and it's just it's amazing. We need her. We need her. We need hundreds, millions of people like her. She is a fucking badass. Now we're going to go on to the next female badass in history, Zheng Yisao from China. Also known as Qingxia or Sheyang. One of Herstory's most successful pirates and most powerful female pirate of all time. Now, Zheng Yisao was born to a poor family in Xinwei in 1775, and she became a prostitute as a teenager in a floating brothel of Guangzhou. But she was extremely clever and observant and very strategic. In 1801, at the age of 26, she married a pirate captain named Zheng Yi. And they had 2 sons, but the sons aren't important. She's the most important. Now, the husband was a powerful pirate for the Vietnamese Taisun dynasty, but after his cousin died, Zheng Yi took over a large fleet, and together with her by his side, they unified smaller gangs into a massive confederation. Now, by 1805, the confederation had up to 70,000 pirates and hundreds of ships, larger than the Spanish Armada. Never fucking heard of this. It's fucking dope. She helped organize and manage all of it. So after her husband's death in 1807, she took over the fleet. She turned it into the most powerful pirate organization in Asia. She did have the support of her former husband's adopted son, Zhang Bao, I believe is how you say his name, and he became the commander of the largest fleet, but she became the unofficial commander of the entire Guangdong Pirate Confederation. Oh, shut the fuck up. This is so cool. She was renowned as a brilliant strategist and effective negotiator. And of course, she was organized. She organized pirates into fleets by flag color. She created strict rules to prevent infighting. So like the pirates among themselves just wouldn't fight. And she helped set up protection rackets and tax systems. She led massive raids on coastal towns, defeating provincial fleets and caused widespread terror along the southern Chinese coast. Now, it's rumored that she led up to 90,000 pirates and 1,800 ships, and that she forbade the raping and harming of female captives. To disobey meant death. Now, historically, it was only logged that she had up to 70,000 pirates, but I believe they could come and go in up to 90,000. I think it's believable. Either way, she led close to 100,000 freaking pirates in a fleet. That's amazing. Now, back to this fucking dope-ass thing. She forbade raping and harming of female captives, right? So the code explicitly stated that women captives were not to be harmed or harassed or raped, or it was met with execution as a consequence, as it fucking rightfully should be. And the codes also required women captives to be registered and given separate quarters for their protection. Dope as fuck. And in 1810, after years of dominance, she negotiated a surrender. Now, the rumor is it took 3 countries to stop her. Now, I looked up the truth or historically, that's true. That's confirmed. She got increased pressure from the Qing Chinese government, and they had support from both Portuguese and British ships who joined patrols together against the pirate fleet. So yeah, 3 nations were actually involved in efforts to suppress piracy and pressure on them specifically too. Now, the formal surrender was negotiated with the Qing government alone. So mostly true though. And this motherfucking badass negotiated peace on her terms. As a part of the surrender agreement, she and most of her crew were pardoned, and her men received material rewards such as pork, wine, and money. Now, the rumor is that she got government positions for all of her men, but the truth is that later she married this guy, Zhang Bao, and her husband was an informed lieutenant and was awarded a military rank of lieutenant and was allowed to retain a private fleet of 20 to 30 ships. And then some of her former pirates were permitted to join the military as well, but not everybody. So she got a full government pardon, and she kept her fucking wealth. She retired peacefully, rich and feared, and respected until her death in 1844. To this date, she remains the most successful female pirate in history. Zheng Yisao. Oof. God. This shit is epic. Okay, next fucking epic woman, Queen Njinga, the most powerful African queen who fought colonizers for 40 years and never lost. I'm getting amped up. I think my tea is kicking in. So she was born in 1583. So this is 16th century to the royal family of Ndongo, a Mumundu kingdom in what is now northern Angola. She was the daughter of Nola Colombo, who was also known as Ndola Kilwanji, who was the king. So she was the king and his favorite concubine's daughter. And her mother, his favorite concubine's name was Kengela Ka Nkombo. So Queen Njinga, princess at this time, I guess you could say, but she received military and political training from a very young age, and she showed early aptitude for diplomacy and crisis management. Okay. So after the death of her brother, Mbandi, Njinga became queen, aka Ngola of Ngondo, one of the few female rulers in the regions in history. And she faced immediate challenges, of course. It was from the Portuguese colonial forces who wanted to expand their influence and control the slave trade. So fucked up. So she was remarkable at diplomatic skill, okay? She negotiated with the Portuguese and she sought alliances with other African states and European powers. She even temporarily converted to Christianity, taking the name Ana de Sousa, and was baptized to gain European allies. And this is fucked up, but also dope of her. So during the famous negotiation of Luanda in the early 1600s, the Portuguese government attempted to humiliate her. They tried to humiliate her by not offering her a chair, and they left like a floor mat for her to sit on, which obviously is an insult meant to diminish her status. But she was fucking legendary and extremely defiant, right? So she had one of her servants get down on all fours and she sat on her back using them as a human chair. But that meant that she was meeting the governor at eye level, eye to eye. Like, you're not going to make me sit on the floor, fucker. All right, one of my people, come help me out. I'm going to sit on you and we're going to have this entire meeting. So basically, she was saying she was not going to be treated as inferior, and it was seen as a refusal to submit to colonial insults. Now, we're not even done. At the age of 41 in 1626, after failed negotiations, the Portuguese declared war, forcing Njinga into exile. But while she was in exile, she formed an alliance with an Imangala warlord, Kasanji. She married him and adopted aspects of the culture and military tactics. So her being sent into exile just made her fucking smarter, stronger, and got more forces. Now, between 1631 and 1635, which would be her like mid-40s, she conquered neighboring kingdoms, or the neighboring kingdom of Matamba. She led her army in guerrilla warfare. She disrupted Portuguese supply lines and provided sanctuary to escaped enslaved people. She was strengthening her forces. Some sources say that her army reached up to 80,000 men and women at its peak. So now, closer to her 50s or in her 50s, and between 1641 and 1644, she defeated the Portuguese in several battles and reclaimed parts of Ndongo. She literally resisted the Portuguese for decades and was never captured or subdued. Now, there's a crazy rumor that we're going to fact check right now. So it's rumored at 60 that she led cavalry charges and swung into battle on ropes to inspire her troops. The truth is, there's no credible historical evidence that, like, showing that she led a cavalry swinging into battle or ropes like at any time. But it is well documented that she was an active military leader who personally led her troops into battle, even in her later years of like 60 plus. Now, in her later years, Queen Njinga renounced some of her more extreme Imangala practices and forbade infanticide and decreed that children should be baptized. She negotiated a peace treaty with the Portuguese in 1656, but she refused to pay tribute to the Portuguese crown. Love that. It has been said that she was the first African ruler to force Portugal to sign a treaty as equals. For 4 fucking decades, she protected her people from slavery while ruling 3 kingdoms. Queendoms, let's be real. And she died at around 80 in 1663, undefeated. She outsmarted European powers for half of her life and is remembered as a symbol of resistance, leadership, and African sovereignty. Woo! Now, we've jumped around continents and looked at many different flags, and now we're going to look at the pride flag in the air. Julie d'Aubigné was a 17th century French swordswoman who could outfight most men. She was queer as fuck. She lived fiercely and fearlessly and entirely on her own terms. Julie was born in 1673, so we're in the 17th century now. She was born to her father, Gaston, who was a secretary to the Count d'Armagnac. Armagnac. Let's go ahead and say it's Armagnac. The master of the horse for King Louis XIV. AKA, she was educated among boys, learning academic subjects and fencing from her father. She became an exceptional fencer and often fought male competitors. And she began wearing men's clothing and competing publicly as a teenager. I fucking love this for her. So you remember her father was a secretary to this count, right? So she became the mistress at age 14. She became the mistress to this count who arranged her marriage to Ségur de Maupin, and her stage name was La Maupin. Now, her husband was sent to the provinces, and she ran away with a fencing master, Saran, who was wanted for murder. So that's a cute little adventure right there. So apparently they earned a living by giving fencing demonstrations and singing in taverns and fairs, and Julie would often be dressed in men's attire. Now, again, there's this wild rumor, right? And we're going to fact check it. So there's rumored that she ran off with a nun, got caught, and set the convent on fire to escape. The truth is that's actually mostly accurate. So she fell in love with a young woman, and when the woman's family sent her to the convent, Julie entered the convent as a postulate. And if you don't know what a postulant is, it's basically someone who's in the initial stages of like becoming a nun. So she basically went in disguise so she could be near her love. And then they both stole the body of a dead nun, placed it in the lover's room, and set it on fire to fake her death so they could escape together. So that rumor, mostly fucking true. Now, Julie was sentenced to death and absentia for arson, kidnapping, and body snatching, but she evaded capture, of course. Then, hard right turn, don't know where this came from, but then she became a celebrated opera singer in Marseille and later Paris, performing under her maiden name and later as La Maupin. She was known for her powerful voice and dramatic performances. She became a star of the Paris Opera. This woman led a fucking life. She frequently fought duels, killing or wounding several men, and she was renowned for her fearlessness and skill. Now, here's another crazy-ass rumor that we're going to fact-check. So the rumor is 3 drunk men attacked her, and she dueled all 3 at once, and she walked away laughing. Now, the truth is that's totally fucking true. Okay. So according to multiple historical accounts and popular retellings, she is said to have fought 3 noblemen in a single duel. The most famous version of like retelling the story describes her attending a ball where she was disguised as a man and she kissed a woman. So she provoked anger from these 3 noblemen who challenged her to a duel. She accepted, defeated all 3 in succession, and went back to the ball afterward. Here's another wild rumor. It said that she once killed a nobleman in a duel and then seduced his wife at the funeral. The truth is there's no credible sources that say that that happened in history, but I would not, like this life that she led, I wouldn't even put it past her. That feels like it could be true. There's just no credible sources about it. You know, at some point in history, bisexuality was seen as like the baseline and then like heterosexuality came after that. Let's get back to that. Anyway, so she had affairs with both men and women and was considered bisexual by modern standards. She's rumored to have killed at least 3 men, and some sources say up to 10 in duels. She died in 1707 at 33 or 34, leaving behind a reputation as a daring, unconventional woman who defied the norms of her time. Next badass on the list, Sophie Scholl. There are memorials named in her honor. She was born May 9th, 1921 in Falkenberg, Germany, to an upper-middle-class, politically engaged family. Her father was a critic of the Nazi Party. Now, this is what I call evolution of self. This is like character arc right here in real life. So as a young girl, she actually joined the Bunddeutscher Mädel, which is a term that refers to the League of German Girls, which was the female branch of the Hitler Youth during Nazi Germany. So think Girl Scouts for Hitler. Okay? Now, initially, she was enthusiastic about Nazi ideals, but became increasingly disillusioned and influenced by her father's anti-Nazi views and her own growing Christian faith. As a young adult, she enrolled at the University of Munich in 1942, so she could study biology and philosophy. And that's where she learned of the White Rose, a student-led resistance group founded by her brother, Hans Scholl, and his friends. And after discovering her brother's involvement, she immediately demanded to join the group, and she became a key member. Obviously, because we're talking about her. Now, this is something in history I feel like I remember seeing. I'm going to explain it in a minute, but I feel like I remember seeing things like this in like movies, in historically accurate movies, but I didn't fully understand like what this organization did, right? So the White Rose wrote, printed, and distributed anti-Nazi leaflets across Germany, and they were calling for passive resistance and condemning Nazi crimes. Now, one rumor was that she turned her basement into a resistance printing press. So we're going to fact check that. So there was no full-on printing press in her basement, but various homes and basements were used as spaces to work using a typewriter and duplicating machine, which is like a mimeograph, to print their leaflets. So like full-on true, no, but kind of technically. So she helped distribute these leaflets using her gender to avoid suspicion. And the group's network reached as far as Hamburg and Vienna, which is up to 600 kilometers away, aka almost 400 miles away from the university where they were at. Now, sadly, on February 18th, 1943, Sophie and Hans were caught red-handed, essentially. They were distributing the leaflets at the university. They were arrested by the Gestapo, interrogated, and tried in a show trial presided over by Roland Freisler. Now, as a rumor that she told the judges that you will soon be standing where I am now. Now, the truth is there's no verified historical account of like the trial records. So maybe she did say that, maybe she didn't. But she did, what is noted historically is that she did interrupt the judge multiple times during the trial like a fucking G. Now, they were convicted of high treason and executed by guillotine on February 22nd, 1943. She was 21 years old. Now, she became a symbol of courage and moral resistance against the Nazi regime. Now, this is a part I've seen in movies. Obviously, many people lost their lives fighting for this cause against the Nazi regime. But this is the part. So after her death, the Allies distributed the final White Rose leaflet by air over Germany. Many school streets and memorials are named in her honor. Next badass on the docket, Mary Ellen Pleasant. Now, she was born into the culture of slavery, okay, but she ended up making millions and then used her fortune to attempt to burn slavery to the ground. She was born August 19th, 1814 in Virginia or Georgia or Philadelphia because sources can't agree on that. Now, it was written that she was most likely born into slavery but gained her freedom at an early age. But she was sent as a bond servant, aka a person who is legally or contractually bound to serve a master, often for a specific period or for life, and the term was synonymous with slave at the time. But it can also refer to someone who willingly enters into service. But unlike a hired worker, a bond servant does not have the freedom to leave their service at will. So she was sent to be a bond servant to the Hussey family in Nantucket. Now, initially, when I read the part that said she was most likely an enslaved person, I was like, fuck you, obviously she was. But upon further research, she spent her early years in Nantucket with this family, right? The Hussey family. They were abolitionists and Quakers. What does that mean? They were involved in the abolitionist movement, so they helped with the Underground Railroad. Nantucket itself was known as a station on the Underground Railroad, and fugitive enslaved people sometimes came there under the protection of Quakers like the Husseys. So the family members were active in local friend meetups and supporting anti-slavery efforts. They provided aid and shelter to those seeking freedom. Now, Mary Ellen, who lived with them as a bond servant, was introduced to abolitionist circles through her connection with them. So how did this woman become a millionaire, right? So she gained business skills and independence through her work and education with the Husseys. It's said that they treated her like family instead of a servant. She ended up marrying James Smith, a wealthy abolitionist, and worked with him on the Underground Railroad. Now, he died, right? So after his death, she continued as a conductor, helping enslaved people escape to freedom. She later marries another man around 1848, and due to danger from slavers, and slavers were individuals or groups of people who captured, traded, and owned enslaved people. So because of the danger from slavers, they moved to San Francisco in 1852. Now, there's a big rumor that she built this spy empire, okay? But the truth is there's no credible evidence that she built a spy empire. I'm air quoting super hard. But it is documented that she worked as a domestic servant and boarding housekeeper, which gave her access to the homes and conversations of the wealthy and powerful individuals. but it was never like a part of a formal, organized network. Okay. So her intelligence and networking skills helped her learn about investments and business opportunities. So this woman was taking action and paying the fuck attention. In California, she established successful restaurants and boarding houses for miners during the gold rush. So quickly, she became an astute investor in real estate, railroads, and other ventures, and amassed a fortune, arguably the first African American self made millionaire. Okay, she helped found the Bank of California. That's how rich this woman became. She was extremely successful as an entrepreneur. She built and managed boarding houses, she had laundromats, restaurants, and a chain of like other businesses. She also acquired a significant amount of real estate, and that did include a mansion, like a 30-plus room mansion that took up 2 city blocks in San Francisco and a huge-ass ranch, like a large ranch in Sonoma Valley. And I mentioned she helped found that bank. Yeah, she invested in railroads and banking and was considered one of the wealthiest Black women in the country at the time. She's known as the mother of civil rights in California because of her activism in legal battles. Financially, she supported John Brown's abolitionist efforts, including his raid on Harper's Ferry. Now, remember I mentioned legal battles, right? She won several civil rights lawsuits, most notably the one against San Francisco streetcar companies for racial discrimination. This was like 1866 through 1868. And what happened is she and 2 other Black women were rejected from a city streetcar in 1866. So she sued 2 streetcar companies for racial discrimination. And the case was called Pleasant versus North Beach and Mission Railroad Company. It went to the California Supreme Court, where it was decided in 1868 that segregation on public streetcars was illegal in the city. What a fucking G. She was like, fuck you, motherfuckers. All right, I got money to sue you. I will do that. And they lost. On top of all of these things and donating to causes, she also provided shelter and guidance to African Americans and others in need. Now, Mary Ellen Pleasant died on January 4th, 1904 in San Francisco. And she was remembered as a pioneering businesswoman, an abolitionist, and a civil rights leader. See, this is why I'm fucking doing this. These were like epic stories of women who like defied social expectations. They shattered barriers. They fought relentlessly for justice, for freedom, for fucking equality. And our journey just went from like African queen leading her own army into war to like navigating brutal challenges of colonialism and slavery to one of the most successful pirates in history, controlling close to 100,000 men in her fleet. Like, I can't think of anything else that serves cunty energy like that. I just can't. Like bold actions, unwavering commitment to justice. Like I fucking love this. Okay, until next time.